Hi everybody, this is Christos,
This is Foster.
and this is episode 2, where we dedicate everything to the subject of protection and the energies around protection. So, because this subject will come up a lot in our sessions, and in spiritual work in general, I think protection is the bread and butter of every tradition, in shamanism as well, right? And there are various forms of protection and also various levels of protection. You're not going to go and get a machine gun to a little argument at home, right? So some conflicts are justified by the technique that you want to use. And we also want to clarify a little bit what negative energy really is and how it can also be used against you if you misunderstand this kind of a frequency, because it's an energy in the end of the day, like all emotional experiences. So from a shamanic point and from a healing point, when you start working on somebody, I know that already you always set up a perimeter of protection.
Remember, most of my workshops are done in a circle of people. So automatically any circle will start to protect you. If you cast a circle as a medicine wheel, that is also protective, not only balancing and harmonizing with the earth. If you truly want protection, it's also how you feel about yourself. It is that you follow your own rules, your own responsibilities in life without regret. That you feel inside of yourself that you are protected always. But to enhance that, certainly we would use different symbols, different sigils
Right.
in magic.
You know,
And
the circle, of course, is the
especially
universal protection symbol, right? Everything in the form of an egg, a shell, a magic circle, or a medicine wheel, or anything that is done within a round format, I think that already contains
well, I
universal
like
energy.
both magic and I like shamanism. So I cast a circle around myself before I go out in the morning. I cast a circle around my car before I drive. I like to make a pentagram starting in the bottom left-hand corner, going up, then going to the circle above me, above the car, and also on me. And I like pentagrams all around me. I like, first of all, to call my power animal in the morning. Always to come, there can be one or there can be more than one power animal, and I ask my power animal to protect me throughout the day. If I want, I might wear the skin of the animal when I need extra protection. I will always imagine the animal between me and someone else.
Right. In other words, what he describes now, of course, is a more advanced version, which relates a little bit to what we talked in the first episode about spirit talk and spirit connection. I think for those of you who really make an effort to have a fundamental connection to your higher power, and it doesn't really matter what you call it, because there is no tradition to what you should call it. We call it higher intelligence, for example, or an expert. I like that idea. He calls it a power animal. So I think the best form or the easiest form that is understood by our system of protection is to invoke something that gives you personally a feeling of protection. A Buddhist will not make a Christian cross, and a Christian will not use a pentagram. Well, you would be surprised actually how often that happens, but let's assume that they don't. But a Muslim will not use a cross necessarily, and so on and so on. In other words, the idea of symbolism, it has to be something so personal, and therefore there are many, many versions of protection. The best one is the most personal one. The ring of my mother, an amulet that a friend gave me, or a talisman that somebody offered me. These are all aspects of personal connection to a higher source or power, basically. In other words, it's a medium. It doesn't even have to be magical in that sense. It means something to you. It transfers a desire to be protected. That is the idea, and that is the basic concept of protection. Just to have a smooth day, you see, and a certain level of immunity you could also say.
I mean, in so many traditions, you wear an eye.
Right.
So I actually wear an eye. And I also have an eye tattooed on me.
Right.
So that I am repelling. The eye looks at you, it repels, it sees everything.
Right.
I know who I am. And the eye says anything unlike me that is not meant for me, out of my system.
Right. The eye also as a really old symbol of protection because it is reflective. The all-seeing eye. Many don't make the connection that I made quite early when I started learning, is that what you call the activated third eye, to have an active third eye or an open third chakra. Now let me explain. You cannot open or close a chakra. Either it's active or it's inactive. But if it's closed, you're dead. You will notice. But a chakra, as long as you breathe and function within this reality, this dimensional reality, this gravity of reality, you have active chakras. Now we can get sick, we can get into conflicts, we can also harbor conflicts that are long past. You just continue them. That's another form of sabotage protection. You feel protected, but you're dragging, what Foster says, an old concept around. We're going to talk about this a little bit. And you cannot be in a bad mood and create protection. It's counterproductive. It doesn't make sense. You have to be in a place of at least some shape or form of neutrality, if you want. That's important. And the so-called awakened eye, that means a person who is spiritually aware, just to call it in a simple form, awareness or awaken, that third eye that is connected to seeing and recognizing and skills and ability and telepathy and so on, is the primary force of protection, because you are aware, you're conscious, right? And that consciousness already, to some degree, puts you above a certain frequency. That means some lower energies will not dare to come close, because they would basically either commit suicide by coming through your frequency, or they would have to transform into your frequency. So we are absorbers. Like in healing, we say this very often. I'm so amazed, and I've seen this with Foster as a really huge exception, healers who don't protect themselves, because whenever you touch somebody or you work with somebody's healing energy, you will pick something up from them, they will pick something up from you. That is the law of exchange of energy. And if you're healing as a healer or as a contributor to the well-being of another person, if your energy is not above it, you're going to just exchange, nothing else. You carry and overload your system with something your spirit will not be able to recognize as a subject, and the person will feel better for a day or two, or maybe a week.
So you have to cleanse yourself afterwards. It's good to wash your hands in cold water afterwards. I like to take a pendulum, I like to hold the water spout, or I like to speak into it and say, I release any energies that I picked up, any negative spirits, any evil, anything, and I release it and I wash it out through the astral, through the water that's coming through the pipes, and I'm holding the faucet at the same time. I always like to purify myself with smoke. So sage or rosemary or cedar or, sweetgrass, something to cleanse myself before and after ceremony or before and after a healing. I like to always have an altar of protection in my home. I like, first of all, to protect myself the way that I feel protected. So if you like archangels, I always say Michael to my right, Uriel to my left, Raphael in front of me, Gabriel behind me, in a circle of protection. I connect myself to the creator of my own heart.
Or you surround yourself with the light of the Holy Spirit. Imagine a huge ball of light around you, and that is a no effort, very effective form of building a layer of protection. We call this sometimes the 8th layer of the aura. Because we have 7 chakras, so therefore 7 layers of aura. But also we create layers as we go. Especially in our 2022 society, we are in a different century now, and we're dealing with different forms of energy, you see. And let's talk a little bit about energy and how to identify energy. There's an easy form. Good feeling, bad feeling. You see, you meet somebody, you don't feel good. For whatever reason. The drama is when we try to figure out why. And from a guidance point, it's really simple. The communication from a guidance point is always through emotions. Good feeling, bad feeling. So when a spirit guide stimulates you and nudges you with your intuition to not do something, not go somewhere, because the feeling is unmistakable, you can feel, then don't do it. The problem is we just ignore it, do it anyway, then the crap hits the fan, and then we complain that our guide didn't help us enough, or didn't tell us in the first place.
They did.
You see what I mean? So you can't win as a spirit guide. But I think there are layers of energies that you need to identify. And one of the basic layers is human mood. Human moods, people can get moody and angry. Now we have a great discussion about mental illness, of course, and mental health, and how stress is being dealt with. The generation of our parents didn't have any therapy. Definitely my family needed it, but never got it. So, you get through a mood, let it out, and you move on with your life. There was no consequence of questioning yourself necessarily. It's like today. Today people break the fingernails that run to therapy, you see. But there is the basic energy of mood. And to some of you, and we want to clarify this because there are also energies, extreme energies that we call curses. There is no such a power, random, that can curse you, unless it is a self-curse. I think that is an energy that, when Foster says you need protection and healing and cleansing especially, that is, I think, one of the most important spiritual confrontations you can do, is when you can identify at what point you or somebody in your family, we would say, cursed themselves. You see, and that is a hole you can get out you can get out of it, but with great difficulty. I think that's where the healing comes in. So there are variations of negativity sometimes, but also we have to talk about sometimes people need to protect themselves from themselves.
That's true. We protect ourselves mostly from human beings. Other people who may have abilities and may be versed in these abilities, and so that they curse you, meaning they bury things in your home, an object, or they put things in your pillows, or whatever, if they truly hate you. Hatred, of course, is a form of cursing. So whenever we say we hate something, I would be very careful to say that. I would be much more neutral. Now, to protect myself in a very more Christianized way, I would do a Kabbalistic cross. If it's Hebrew, I would do various things. A Kabbalistic cross, very simple. Ate, Malkut, Vegebura, Vegedela, Leolam, Amen. And that is a prayer that I certainly like. That is a whole ritual of protection.
It is, it comes from Kabbalah basically. Again, in our line of work, we come from traditions. Traditions, we don't call traditions anymore. We call them currents, because everything starts with shamanism. That's at the beginning. And I think shamans from the beginning, and then comes all the other groups from Wicca to Rosicrucians to any kind of group, alchemists, occultists, and so on. It begins with shamanism, and protection, I think, is also a form of respect. To protect your nature, to protect your properties, to protect and respect also your property, to value what you have achieved. That is also a form of protection, you see, because if you have a healthy amount of pride in what you have achieved, it is protected, because you know what you created and what you've given and what you've done. So anybody who can come with an outer opinion, if you let this outer opinion become more important in how you feel, then you need help. You see, then you need help, because that is really a rule that we want to give you right from the beginning. Do not let an outer opinion be more important than how you feel about yourself. Even if the feeling is, not positive, but it is your feeling, it's your identity point, you see, and that's your starting point in order to get better. So we begin with protection in a space, in a home especially, and you see some energies we can talk a little bit about it. Some energies in a home, you come in, we've been to great homes because we're now house hunting. So we've been to a great deal of many homes, and you come to a home and you just feel a loss of energy. You see, it doesn't mean that the space is negative or bad. It just means that your energy where you are and the space's energy or the guardian of the space of the home do not resonate. See, and this is also in shamanism, I think, something I learned very early, way before I met Foster. The few shamans I met, Native American shamans, by the way, who said we would never just go to a land and just build because we like it there. They have to ask permission of the guardians of the land. Also in the British Isles, very, very common still to do that in certain areas. It's just not, I'm going to go build random what I want. So it is right from the beginning the intention to create a space in unison, in harmony with what is there already. And that is already a great deal of protection. You see, and I think when land and space and the spirit of the space, a house is a spirit in the end, feels protected by being taken care of, its bills are being paid, it's kept clean, right? It's being elevated. You know, we have a lot of objects like crystals and pyramids and symbolism. Everybody who comes here and is not spiritual does feel something. That is service to the space, and that service also translates to a form of protection. You see, no one can come into this space unless they resonate in a positive, hopefully in a positive way. And we had this in our old house.
People get kicked out of your house because they're not resonating with you.
Absolutely.
And if you really don't like a person, you put salt in their shoes. You make them take their shoes off. You say, well, I don't want anybody with shoes in the house. And then you put salt in their shoes, and they slowly leave.
You see. Very common, by the way, for home is to put a little pinch of salt at the front door or the entrances to the house. You know, in the US we have multiple entrances. Sometimes it's the garage, sometimes the front door, sometimes it's the back door of the kitchen. So wherever you have a pinch of salt, a more advanced...
Or windowsills too.
Or windowsills too. Another version is to use, for example, symbols in Feng Shui. There is, you know, they use crystals, they use mirrors.
Mirrors definitely to repel something and reflect it out the front door.
Absolutely. Then we go further into the horseshoe, right? Which
above
is
our door.
Above our door. There are brooms.
In a U form.
In witchcraft, the broom, which is with the bristles up, standing next to the door, not with the bristles down, but up, ready to cleanse, sweep out the negative.
And bring in something good as well, the broom.
See?
And the broom has to be dressed. It has to be dedicated to a
So there's many details in all of this. In voodoo, for example, and hoodoo, they use red brick dust,
which we carry with us.
Which you can really buy this in many. Everything's online now.
Or make it yourself.
Or you can make it yourself if you have too much time on your hand. Next time you have COVID and you have to quarantine, that's what you can do. Get a brick and start grinding it. So you take this ground. Because it represents a building, the power of a building or a construction or a building process, and basically you have the symbol of a building and you put this in front of your door. In some cases we know also people put it around the house if it's doable.
A brick wall of protection.
Right? You can do this also in apartments, of course, the same principle.
In a hotel room, when you first go in a hotel room, I always make 5-pointed stars in every corner. I put in the red brick dust or salt, if I don't have red brick dust, always at the door frame, at the liminal area, so that only good energies enter a room.
Because he says salt, a nice little secret that I learned from my rabbis, is successful rabbis, by the way, they were not poor, is to have a little bit of aluminum paper with a shiny side outside, and always to have a pinch of salt wrapped in a little bit of aluminum paper, and you have it in your pocket or your wallet. And every day you have to change the salt. So you have to discard the old salt and bring salt. A couple 100 years ago was more valuable than gold. So it represents money. Well, also, it's a disinfector. So it's something that protects you. You see,
when I'm in the kitchen and everybody's cutting themselves, or there's too many accidents in a kitchen, it's a buildup of negative energy in the kitchen. So I immediately take garlic, or I take an onion, I cut it in half, and I leave it out for at least 3 to 4 hours, because it has to absorb the negative energy of a kitchen.
Yeah.
And that happens when too many glasses start to break.
electric devices, start, decide all to break down at the same time. Or when you feel an energy of sluggishness, when you say something is not right here, out of the blue, things stagnate, or you can't find items anymore, or you feel a lot of tiredness, or, then it would be good. We have a whole video about protection, by the way, on our Vimeo. So check out our website. There you can have
Symbols
I think
under a
it's a 5-6
door.
hour video all about various forms.
We have symbols that we put
Symbols,
under a carpet, and then when people walk in, no negative energy
See,
attaches.
And let me
comes into the house.
just say the reason why at least my rabbis and successful, I call them Kabbalists because it's a magical practice in the end, use salt a little bit in a silver container basically that they carry with them, is that the aluminum paper is
a mirror.
A mirror. It reflects back the negativity, and the salt represents value like money or business. And I know people who swear by it. They do this, day in, day out. The variation of the aluminum paper, the variation of a locket, for example, and you fill it with salt. Please remember, once you go to an airport, I think aluminum paper with white stuff doesn't look that well. Just saying from experience. So remember where you're going if you're going anywhere abroad. But it is a form to protect business value, reputation, and money, basically. And it is a very, interesting secret within the occult Hebrew community. And I learned this very, very early.
I like to protect people from themselves. So when you have a thought form, for instance, like anger, or you had a violent household or something, it can create thought forms. It can create independent thought forms of anger, of rage, of hatred, whatever. And these become little bubbles around you, and you refer back to them, and these things can become independent, and then they desire energy. So when your own thought forms start to desire energy from you, sometimes you're protecting yourself from your own thought forms that you created. Now, at any moment, you can say with some power, in the same power that you created it, I destroy my own thought forms. But you also made positive thought forms, so you have to be very careful what you're destroying. I want to destroy all negative thought forms that I have created over my whole life. You can do that as well. Now, they can become phantoms, independent existences, and then they can live inside of your house, and that's not necessarily a poltergeist. That is now your own phantoms, your own negativity.
That can detach from you.
And that has a life of its own.
And have a life on its own. It's very, very common. That's what I'm saying. You're going to a place that can be historic or, and you feel a presence. It's not necessarily, a haunting of sort. It is, for example, in a very extreme case, when somebody lives in a very violent home, like domestic violence, and the person who perpetrates the violence is somebody who creates an energy form, a larvae or a phantom, as we call it.
Larvae.
This energy loves the product that nurtures it, which is, in this case, anger or violence, right? They're just getting off of it, or violence and addiction in that sense.
Well, violence begets violence.
Right.
So if you have resonance for the violence, you pick up on the thought form, and it starts to affect you.
And that means also you cannot pick up on something that you don't resonate with, which is, on one side, worrisome. On the other side, it's good because it gives you an advantage, to anticipate something. But the idea is also that and I've seen this happening more than once, when people, for example, with a very violent background, I've seen houses like these, and I've been called to these houses to cleanse them from the poltergeist. And then I said to the guy, it's not a poltergeist, it is a residue of a phantom that basically drained its host. A lot of people who end up in mental hospitals, in institutions, they deal with that kind of a exposure to their own negativity. The negativity grows out of them and basically drains the host. Once the host is drained, they discard the body. You see, and that can be literally from being mentally broken down to dead, basically. But the energy remains in that place. Usually it sits in corners. They love corners. You know,
Negative energies.
Negative, sharp. They love that.
Phantoms.
And everybody who comes into that space, for some reason or not, starts to become angry. That means the energy needs to stimulate. It needs food. It needs to get nurtured, you see. So if no one goes to a place like this, it starves to death eventually. That's what, you see, everything needs nurturing.
You have to clean the corners of your house, whether with
Especially.
sound, very high bell sounds, very good for cleaning. Definitely smoking corners. I always smoke them with a fan or some sage or cedar or rosemary or, I like to use different herbs. And I like to walk around a house. I like to talk to the spirit of the house. When we talked about this before, when you go to the land and you buy a house, or you're now just meeting the spirit of your house, I go outside and I introduce myself. I am the caretaker of this house for now, and I would like to meet the spirits here. I would like to ask your permission to build anything or to live here or to, set fire here, whatever I'm going to do, make a little fire in a thing or have a pool made or whatever. You have to talk to the spirits, especially if it's a whole forest. There could be quite a few spirits. And they like that. At least you consulted them. So a gnome may come, a landscape angel, however you want to see them. There are different spirits. There could be tribes that live on your land. And you're meeting Indians. You're meeting different spirits and you want to speak to them. Now, I have my own spirit that protects me. And that's an old friend of mine from an Aztec life. And he comes and he protects me. And that's because, you save their life, they save your life. You have a bond. And so that bond always lasts. And they're there for me. Now, for a thought form, I like to invoke Archangel Michael, because Michael is a very, very strong agent.
No nonsense.
No nonsense, very direct. And I say, Archangel Michael, destroy these thought forms with me. Let's destroy them now. And I also say, Archangel Michael, bind this thought form or phantom in cords of cosmic light and release it from my body.
Right.
Or bind the spirit in my house in cords of cosmic light and release it from my house. Or I will ask Archangel Michael specifically to bind a curse from somebody else. To reverse a curse, there's all sorts of things. You can have bags that you carry with you to break a hex, to break a curse from anyone. It depends what kind of curse it is. Is it a witch curse? Is it a specific, we have many friends, and we give them hex bags, or we make them for them. We put something personal in them, or somebody who loved us always is very protective. If there's somebody, even especially if they died and they loved you, one of their objects, highly protective. So we create various things you put in your pocket, or symbols in a moment. You can throw even a rune at somebody of protection, because they're very strong protective runes. So I use Archangel Michael. Also destroy all negative thought forms around me, inside of somebody's body as well. Now, in my work as a shaman, I like to go inside of a body and I like to pull it out. So I don't have a problem doing that, and I do that regularly. I like to do those kind of exorcisms where you're really transforming somebody's own negative thought forms and transmuting them into something positive for their lives. So they get a new chance, but then you can't recreate them again.
Another form, by the way, not very well known and not very well respected, well, now more, I think, is the ancestry invocation, which means your ancestors, and I don't mean the weirdo uncle, who lived with a goat, but we call it a pet. We talk about the lineage in itself and the spirit of the lineage. I think ancestry, the fact that you are in a physical body that you've chosen with your contract to inhabit and play out the role that you've signed up to for, ancestors are great sources of protection. The power of family, the power of breakthroughs, the power of transformations within a family lineage is something you can invoke. You can call forth, basically. And in more in the African traditions, I think it's much more common. Also in Hoodoo, it's much more common, especially the Appalachian traditions.
Everywhere.
But we see this more and more, is that referencing back to the forces of our families, basically. And again, we all have the rotten eggs, strewn inside our lineages, and we don't call on, Uncle Mussolini, of course, or something like that, or, my cousin Nero or something. Of course not. But we're including the spirit that had the intention of evolving, of moving forward. You see, and this is so interesting that there are really just three sources of conflict which desire at the end a form of protection. The most common and most logic is childhood. Childhood is a great source of conflict, right? Especially the first 7 years. Then the damage is done, basically. After that, it's just, whatever.
Repeating patterns.
Repeating patterns, right? Then, of course, past lives. And you can think about them what you want. They do exist, and there is now a great deal of scientific study also about it that you can read about, Mr. Moody and, a lot of a century now of research about it.
Well, Christos likes to tell the past lives very accurately in detail.
Right.
And in accepting these past lives, in realizing them, and they do make sense in people's lives, very much so. It's
People resonate.
Yes,
right.
The decisions they made in the past. And once they change those decisions, things get lifted off them.
Right.
Like a family curse, or like something that
Right.
was bothering their mind.
It's like revealing a secret,
They have
because
a release.
if a family has a secret, which is the third conflict, which is ancestors, we've seen families who never told their children that they're actually adopted, or they're not biologic, or whatever, kidnapped. We hear all sorts of stories and secrets. The traitor uncle who betrayed his family, the mistress who stole money.
There's many things you've done in past lives that you now, in essence, can atone for in 1 second.
For example, if that is the choice in your contract.
Yes.
But again, the childhood and past lives is pretty much integrated now into accepting as a source in spirituality and spiritual healing work. But ancestry is still something, which is very, very difficult to comprehend, because I don't know which one caused this whole damage. But you see, some families, and you can tell, I'm not going to say names, but you can tell there's something just following them like a shadow, and it adds like a price to it. And I think that as ancestry can be the cause of, let's call it bad luck or repetitions. There's a term that you're using, the anniversary effect, for example, right, in psychology. But it also applies from a non-physical perspective, that every couple periods something repeats in some shape or form.
Right. If your mother had a car accident when you were 12 years old and you were in the car, and then you now have children that are 12 and you're in a car, you might have an accident.
No.
Your father goes bankrupt at 53, you turn 53, and all of a sudden your luck changes,
Right.
and you go bankrupt. That's an anniversary effect.
Exactly.
That's imprinted inside of you.
Right. And this is also a resonance of a bond. That means you sympathize with the parent or with the person in the situation, and sympathizing invites. You see, it invites in. Let me say a funny story about protection and how simple it is. A gazillion years ago, I had a client in Germany, and she said, I have this ex-husband who's crazy, so I divorced him to, have my peace. And he stalks her and slices her tires and sends her dead rats, and the weirdest stuff. And I said, and what do you do, despite, besides police and, restraining orders? She said, I sent him Reiki every day, and love and peace and harmony too. And I said, Please go in love and peace and just move on. And she says, funny is, after that, things get worse. It's like an escalation. She said, I don't know what I'm doing wrong, because I'm doing everything that the secret told me. I'm doing everything that, Christianity tells me, and my priest told me to give love and send love. Love is a form of invitation. Peace, harmony, light is a form of invitation. So by default, the more she sent him love and Reiki and peace and harmony, the more his nature was inspired to go off on her. basically. And I said, just stop it. I said, just stop it. I gave her a little protection symbol and said, just stop sending him stuff. I think the whole thing ended within a couple of weeks. He was never to be heard again and disappeared. You see, just stop adding gasoline to an old fire, to an old flame.
Or you bind them.
That's technique, you see. But again, you cannot protect yourself from something and anticipate it. And that is also the dilemma with protection from a magical point. I protect myself from the demons, but I call them because I want them to bring me a house, a lover, and a car, or God knows what. The same in all shapes and form. You see, you cannot invoke something spiritually and be afraid of it so much that you need protection from it. You see, because
I like to talk to spirits, especially when somebody gets sick. I want to understand, is this a karmic illness? Is this something that they chose that they want to overcome in this life to make them stronger? Or is it something else? Is it a reminder of something in the past? There are many levels to a sickness. And yes, there are spirits attached to sickness. So you can talk to them. You can ask, what's the history of the sickness? Why have you come right now? What in your life do you also need to heal inside of you? What has been going off track and is disharmonious for a longer period before the sickness ever manifests into the physical? So all those things. Now, can you reverse a sickness? Of course you can. I've seen people reverse in 1 second an entire sickness where it...
When the meaning is revealed.
Absolutely.
When the brain says, now it makes sense. Sense, to make something... To give something a deeper meaning and understanding, the brain relaxes and loses interest in, hopefully it loses interest in using the body to push the problem out, so to speak. You see, our bodies are thermometers for moods and all sorts of frequencies.
Well, I enjoy talking to a sickness and then doing a song to it or doing a frequency or just taking it out with my hands and sending it to a place where it belongs, not here and not particularly in this body. And that's possible to do. That's part of healing. Other things that we did was we planted rosemary in front of our house to warn us about, that it's a blessing, rosemary, and when people come and they are with no good intentions, the rosemary plants start to suffer. They turn a different color. They absorb the negativity. We had various plants next to our bed also that would warn us, even through dreams. So then there's also protection in dreams. When there were negative energies in the dreams or we were generating them, these plants would die overnight. So we learned various things with plants. They also could become great regulators for us. We always plant, cactuses in front of our house because they have the spindles that protect our front door and send away negativity. Like little swords.
Yeah.
We also have a sword that protects our house, but again, that has to do with a jinn and another kind of spirit that particularly is for protecting
I
a
want
house.
again to remind you guys, go on our website. We have now 49 videos, and one of those videos is about the various forms of protecting yourself. So have a look at that. You can. I recommend not to download it because it's a really big file, but you can stream it at any point. And you can always access it. Once you buy it, you can access it. It's going to be always there. But do yourselves a favor and familiarize yourselves with some techniques where you say, that makes sense to me, that I resonate to, okay? So the thing is also, some tools that are meant for protection actually, how can I say this? They don't protect necessarily, but they take an energy and multiply it. For example, we were just talking about pyramids, because I think pyramids are a fantastic tool to activate a space. And whatever you put in a pyramid, you just have to line the sides exactly with the 4 directions, the cardinal directions. On the other hand, if you live in a space, for example, where, and we had this situation where the front door is exactly 0 degrees in the north. And all the cardinal points are exactly in the 90 degrees, 180 to 70 degrees. These are called temple lines, or as I know them as temple lines. The thing is, when you live in a house with a temple line, or temple lines. You live in a monastery. You live in a church. That means it's a place where you will not generate money. You will not be able to make business out of there. You can be very creative, very productive. You can be very efficient there. You can be very, internal, for example. But everything you put in, we had this experience where we say that I do whatever I can. I cannot make this place successful. I rest here and I recover. And then they go off. It can be a curse or something that's attacking me, or I have black magic or something. And sometimes they just sit on this temple line building, and everything you add, like a pyramid, like crystals, amplifies it. You see, the way the house is built, it's just meant for contemplative energy, right? So you see, when you don't purify a space, an office, yourself, and then you add amplifiers, symbols, crystals, talismans, amulets, and so on, you amplify what is there. See, because the energy doesn't care if you mean it or not. It says, well, that's what you bring, that's what we're going to activate. You see?
Well, you also can inherit a house that's wounded, or you might have wounded areas in your house that have built up through children, through all sorts of things. Right. Sometimes I put things underneath the bed, like certain herbs or different things at night, or under my pillow, in order to have protective dreams that night for specific intentions. I like also salt sometimes under the bed, or rosemary, or different things.
There's so many
I hang
variations you
things
can
from
do.
my bed as well, above the bed.
Well,
to protect us.
the oh my God, what do you call it? I'm blanking. The webbed item. That
Oh, yeah. You can have a dream catcher above your
dream
bed.
catchers. A true dream catcher, not the thing that is made in Taiwan. A true, authentic one is an interesting form of a door protector, if you want. It has an interesting effect, I have to say.
Like a worry basket, where you have it at the front door and it
Same
collects the
idea.
worries of yourself and of the people who come into
So
your
again,
house.
if it means a very simple thing, we are not Christian by any chance, or we're not in a religious form associated with anything religious. It's just our choice. But when we go to a hotel, there are often sacred scriptures in a hotel, like a Bible or a Quran or a Book of Mormon. I don't care. If it is being used, if a book is being used for contemplation, for faith, for orientation in any shape or form, what we do is we take the Bible, we open it at a certain
Page in Psalm 23 or
and we
108 or
we just keep it open. We just keep it open because even not following, we don't believe in the religion of it. The fact that a scripture itself has a form of radiation, if you want, a form of frequency, a form of light, because the intention hopefully is positive. So you open it up and it has the effect within a couple of hours. It takes a few hours. It just cleanses the whole space. I've had the same thing done with the Bhagavad Gita, with a Quran, with a Zohar. Really, it doesn't really matter what it is. If it was used or has been used or is being used in some religious, ceremonial even context, it can also be a magical book, by the way. Same effect.
we do the same thing. We put a Zohar inside of the car, and we put it in the front of the car inside, and it faces out, and it's also protective of the car.
As we say, and as I learned it personally, I don't know in shamanism, because there are no God forms in shamanism, because the nature is God. The all is God. It's not just one person on, a moody guy with a beard on a throne, having, hopefully a good day. That's not what we're talking about here. But in my tradition, or in the traditions I studied, God is the divine, rather, is welcomed in any shape, form, or name in our house. We have Buddhas here, we have pentagrams, we have sacred items from all traditions. We don't follow these traditions. We invite them, and they represent aspects of this inviting, which is the greatest protection I think you can have, is inviting a divine identity, a divine principle, if you want, into your life, which is one in Hermetic, one of the most important steps before you even go anywhere in meditation or before you even touch a candle and study anything. You have to identify with a divine aspect, something that feels desirable, agreeable to some degree, So you can look at the divine as a form of, we do it as the Great Mother, for example.
Or the Creator, Watatanka.
Or the Creator. Again, these are all labels of
Great Nothing.
Experience,
Yes.
Exactly. You see, we call it divine providence.
The Great Mother.
The Great
However you
Mother.
want to talk about it.
No, God, Lord, Goddess, Mother God. I mean, there's variations of it, you see, but you should identify for yourself which divine aspect has the most priority. For me, it's truth. For example,
It can be love.
it can be love, it can be compassion, it can be intelligence, knowledge. It also can be opposition. If the opposition benefits evolution, everything that evolves and changes is always prioritized by the divine and by nature. Have you seen any dinosaurs lately? Of course not. You see, so it's in our nature to refine. And even now in our current times, people are so afraid of change, or something could change, and it's happened already. It's all done already. When you're afraid of change, it's too late. It happened already. And that requires sometimes that we approach life from a different energetic viewpoint.
Also, Christos worked with these pilgrim angels and introduced me to them. And they're a group of angels, and they are protectors of almost everything, from illnesses to car accidents to plagues to all sorts of things. These particular angelic group, love, they cultivate love, they do all sorts of things, healing. And you have to learn a specific way to invoke them, a specific way to make their sigil, and then they come. They present themselves, they fill the room, they fill their sigil. And we used that with one of our cleaning women, and we gave her these sigils that we had all charged for her. And she had a gun put to her head while she was in the car, and she kept the sigils actually in her car. And one of them fell on her lap while the man had a gun. And the angel gave her the power to open the front door. He fell to the ground, push him away. She ran across the street. A truck came between them. He didn't see her go into the next house, and she was protected.
Right.
So there are all sorts of ways to protect yourself. I had to protect myself just with my own strength and my own abilities, and all my guides helping me. I had a staff in my hand, and some people were raiding a campsite. They wanted to steal everything from the campsite. So I went on top of my car, and I stared them down. I looked them all in the eye. And they wanted to kill me or whatever. And I stood on top of the car, and they stared at me, and I think they were quite freaked out by me just holding my own ground, making my own space, casting my own circle, being in my own power. And in that way, they were repulsed and they left. And they didn't take anything. So there are many ways of protection. And we are quite protective people. If we like somebody very, very much, we become quite protective of them. Now, if you start to protect yourself too much and you go overboard, you're attracting the very thing you're trying to get away from. So just by the idea of protection, you're also creating the thing you have to protect yourself from.
The one doesn't go without the other. If you say, I have to protect myself from gun violence, you will attract gun violence, which is a very common subject at the moment in this country. Murphy's Law, the one doesn't go without the other.
Like I have furbas, I have ritual knives, I have all sorts of things that I use for protection and to take something out of somebody's body. So sometimes in the middle of the night, I'll be woken up and I'll just feel I need to have my knife by my side. So I take the knife and I put it by my bed, and that particular knife has a thought form in it to protect me while I'm sleeping in my dreams. And I keep it sometimes under the bed, next to my bed, and I know it's always there. And it protects me from certain lower astral spirits that may want to visit.
Right. Yeah. So again, I always want to refer back to the work we've done during quarantine. We couldn't really go anywhere like everybody else. So I said, now we have the time, and the technology was finally there to produce a library, if anything at all, a library. And there are many, many subjects. We have 4 seasons now, basically. Again, I recommend you stream rather than download, unless you want to spend some money on hard drives and really have them with you, which is fine with me. But they're very high quality, very full quality, 200 GB sometimes size. So you can stream them much easier. But you get a lot of information about it. And again,
Well, we teach you about the magical bowl, which prevents robbers from coming into your house, and you put it under the furniture. We'll teach you all sorts of things that are great for protection.
Many details in there. But again, the one thing I want to also mention, because we talk about energies, and something that kind of, I don't know how to describe it. I want to describe you what I experience. I experience very often in spirituality that there is a judgment habit. I don't like a person's energy, or I don't, and this is very, very often nothing but an excuse to reject an agreement with somebody, or I just don't like somebody's view of point, and therefore I don't like their energy. See, and that is something, first of all, it makes you really vulnerable to attack, because it's basically just, you're fooling yourself in that sense. You don't like somebody, you just don't pay attention to it, you just move on. That's the big difference between humans and not physical beings. They just would never sit there and start arguing with you and then continue the next day again. There is a waste of energy, and therefore, when we continue to live with people who are in the habit of being negative, you can protect yourself as much as you want. It will not last. You cannot protect yourself with a bucket of water in a burning house. You understand? You have to leave. Take your bucket of water and leave the house. It doesn't make sense to be in a space of
Use common
violence.
sense. Yes.
Absolutely, and expect that now the angels will do it. Angels are very interested in suffering. By the way, they believe that you learn a lot through suffering, so they're gonna make you bite through it. We're not on that. Okay, it's a little psychotic, but that's a different podcast. Crazy angels. But the idea is really, don't use and don't let also anybody misuse the concept just because I don't agree with somebody, just because I don't like their view or don't appreciate whatever they do. It doesn't mean they're negative or they're bad or they're
This is about respect.
absolutely, and that's when things get into attacking mode. You see, I don't like that view, therefore I'm going to start attacking you. I can guarantee you that kind of attack will never get an inch out of your own system because it's not justified. You see, in witchcraft, for example, and I want to say those traditions which are not very well known, these are no-nonsense witches in a very old tradition who also practice protection in form of defense at some point when the defense is justified. But as cruel as it sounds, these kind of practitioners are also teaching lessons, and when somebody doesn't know when to stop, there are these people who just are relentless for whatever reason. Then these witches that I've met, they would start to teach them a lesson, and the lesson is quite harsh. They would start basically returning the favor to people these people love, like they would attack their children, parents, loved ones, often the business. They would basically make everybody around them suffer. And here it is the idea of, again, you don't know who you're dealing with sometimes, Very often I say to people, just I had a case, I have to say this, I had a case where somebody called for help, said, we are cursed. It was a whole group of people. We are cursed. We did nothing, but this woman, possibly a gypsy, quite derogatory, cursed us. And first thing I said is, what did you do?
Yes, what did you do?
Nothing, as usual, nothing. You must have done something. You must have said something
To invoke their wrath.
to invoke their wrath. No one in their right mind will wake up and say, today I'm going after that one because I have nothing else to do. Of course not. Something has to cause this, and you have to be very careful because you don't know what people do behind closed doors and what philosophy and tradition they're following. So they asked for help, and I said, and it was a whole, like a group chat, basically. So I did sit down, and I traced the current back, and I talked to this person. I said, listen, they're just idiots. Just let them go. They don't know. They're so above. And there was a moment of agreement. She said, okay, screw them. So it was interesting that the attack affected, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 people, I think. So they all had a very similar experience. So I knew, you could tell there was something real happening. And after a couple of days after I did this, the main person of contact said, we feel so much better. Things are back to normal. We're feeling all right. And somebody wrote in this, I don't know, maybe it was just all in our minds.
Crazy, no.
And I thought, maybe, maybe should just reverse the whole thing.
Sometimes we do.
And sometimes you do. And I thought maybe I should
Learn
just
your
reverse
lesson.
it. Learn your lesson, next time you're going to get screwed big time. But I thought,
Respect the practitioner,
you have to respect.
the one who's helping you too.
Absolutely. And you don't like it, you just go.
Well, sometimes
see?
I have to talk to somebody when they've made a curse. I look at the altar, I look at what they're doing, and I talk to them directly. So I invoke them to come, and then we talk about what this person has actually done.
Right.
And we try to make a deal, something in which we can release this. And usually they have conditions, something, or I have to have them realize that the person has gone through some sort of transformation or change, or there's a lesson involved. Right. And we talk about it, and if it can be resolved, wonderful thing. And your person will immediately feel some sort of peace around it, and that's part of their healing.
Yeah.
Now, I had a friend who grew up in a very bad part of New York City, and, like in the old days of Harlem and other places, and she had a mantra that came to her. So she was backed into a corner, and these men were going to rape her, and she was just a teenager. And she got a mantra in her mind at that moment, and it was Ma Trem, and she would say it so loud over and over again, and the attackers never laid a finger on her. So sometimes these protections come in the moment. And especially they help kids. A great protection is when a mother lays down her life for her children. You can invoke that kind of a mother.
Oh, yeah.
You can invoke
Sacrifice.
somebody, a father who really loves his kids and maybe died protecting them somewhere. You invoke them, and they really will come and protect you. There are all sorts of methods of protection that we've gone through.
Absolutely.
There's too much to say.
It's actually amazing how many forms exist. And that there is, I think, an ounce and a spark of protection in everything. I think it's in the very, very nature of human, earthly evolution to want to protect itself. You see this with animals, you see this with bacteria, you see this with viruses. They evolve in order to survive and protect themselves.
Well, when even we move into a new house, the first thing I want to do is I get 4 railroad nails, which are these big nails, and I say, we're going to caretake this land for the time that we live here, and I go to each corner of the property and I put in the nail, and I put some pee-pee on it, whatever, and I make sure that this property now is protected.
Oh, yeah.
And I do that the minute I move in.
Yeah.
I also make a circle of salt sometimes around the house, and the neighbors ask, what are you doing? And I say, I'm putting fertilizer.
Yeah, or it's against the snails.
I also like rue, this particular plant, with the salt, and I put in a giant bucket, and I go around my house, and I make a full circle.
Or make an offering, from time to time, an offering to the land, some seeds, a little bit of rice.
A plate of food, the first food.
You don't need to go extravagant. A glass of water will do it. A little bit of oil. Again, you don't want to invite rodents, it's not a free
No,
hotel.
no.
But the idea is, you know what I mean, something raw, like raw rice, or a little bit of, I would use uncooked things like seeds, or, a little bit of fruit. But don't exaggerate it. And it is really something you can bury. You can also, in an apartment, if you own an apartment, you can also, or live in one, you can put it in a pot with a live plant, for example.
I like the
you
old German protections really work, like Pennsylvania Dutch. They have very specific symbols that they actually put into their houses. They carve them when they're making
the
the
house.
houses.
Right.
And you can do that even later.
Right.
Runes in Germany are carved already on the houses, like the Pennsylvania Dutch hex symbols. They're fantastic to protect a whole house.
Right.
We love to use them whenever we build.
Yeah. And in a very modern context, of course, with the evolution of, or the modernization of tattoos, for example. Again, I've seen people liking a symbol in an occult book, or they saw this, as usual, online somewhere, never got the full description, now they have it on their skin. It's like sometimes when people like Chinese scripture, and then instead of the sentence they thought they get, it's like a grocery list or an insult. You should know what you're getting. So do your research, because when you have a symbol of protection, or a prayer, or a form of a
prayer,
a sentence, or again, any kind of symbolism that is used through traditions, through faith and belief, and it's charged already, you transfer this into your system.
Both of us have ancient prayers of protection
Right.
already in tattoos around our arms.
Right.
So Christos and I both have that, because we learn that actually from angelic beings.
Right.
They have tattoos on their body. That's where
Angels,
tattoos come from, with prayers.
Since I saw angels the first time when I was really small, they look like tattooed from head to toe. You look like these
prayers.
people when you go to a tattoo convention, and you think like, what the hell happened here? That's a very subconscious form of replicating angelic forms.
It's a kick-ass protection.
Okay. Again, it's not I love mama and the skull, and but the idea of being tattooed from head to toe has a reference, a spiritual reference to angels, because they are here to also to scare somebody, of course. You see, they're not all lovely and nice,
Not
trust
at all.
me.
No.
No. Okay, so that is
And
also...
demons are not all bad.
No.
Not at
You
all.
have to
Very
you have to
lovely.
really get off that idea that the divine is interested in anything else but freedom and evolution.
We
See.
call them all spirits.
The spirits, intelligence, experts of some sort, which also doesn't mean just because they're on the other. I did an astral travel many years ago to a different planetary system, and the beings I connected said, I realized that just because they're extraterrestrial doesn't mean they know everything.
Absolutely.
Which was a relief and a disappointment, because I thought I'm going to get now really big insight into everything. But here we talk about let's talk about real astral travel, which is a technical procedure where you detach spirit, your emotional body from your physical, and the mental from the emotional. Astral travel is really not the right term. It is really a mental journey. And everybody who says they astral travel to God knows where and don't do this, it's something else. I don't know what it is, but it's not true dimensional traveling. And one absolute rule in true hermetic form of dimensional journeying is the room where the body is, has to be sealed. First of all, protected by a circle, as Foster says, maybe also activated through prayers or a ritual, but no one and nothing is allowed to touch the body while
Absolutely.
your two astral and mental bodies are out on different dimensional journeys. Because the touching of the body, or a cat jumping, or the dog licking could cause a shock of sort, and the connection severs, basically. You see, So when I see people, sitting there with their little cappuccinos and close their eyes and their astral travel, and they talk about, I'm now here and there, it's fantasy. And I don't say the fantasy is wrong. They're going somewhere, but it is not true
Yes.
astral, or as I call, mental journeying.
And it needs to be protected.
And that body needs to be protected, So when I see, and we've seen in various forms,
Different than lucid dreaming, because I think that's what
different.
most people are doing.
Yeah, that's very different. See, so again, the more magical you go, the more healing you go, the more spiritual you go, the more metaphysical you go. Protection is something that you cannot underestimate, and if you're too late, you have to go through a process of cleansing, repairing, healing, protecting.
And it is what you believe, and often something will attack you when you're at your weakest. That's not when you're strong. So you also have to maintain your health. You have to maintain your body. You have to create a frequency or a space around you that is charged enough with higher thoughts. Knowing who you are. What you believe is very, very important to protection.
Absolutely.
Now, we did an experiment, Christos and I, in which we walked on any city street. We just happened to do it in a large city. And we said, now, we want to see the thought forms that people create. Any thought forms that come to us during this 1 block walk will go back to those people. So this is to teach you about protection. So we took a walk down the street. Anything they sent to us will go back to them immediately. And people around us started falling, tripping, coughing. They started to lose their balance, dropping in front of us. In other words, the negativity that people send out in a few microseconds go right back to them.
Right.
And you can't imagine in 1 block how many people were affected.
Right.
That means that many people are sending negative thoughts to you. So if humanity just would stop being so judgmental, if they could control their minds and learn to focus, which is what this spiritual sciences are about, we would have a much better world here. But just that 1 block, I finally said, okay, this is too much. After 1 block, we said, we release this. It doesn't have to come back to them anymore. But that's what we are bombarded with every day. And we're picking up energies, negativity, whatever, in our clothes.
And now it gets worse.
Wherever we go.
Now it gets worse because now we have Twitter.
Fear. Yes.
Now we have social media. Now we have comments. Now we have,
That's why we wash our clothes, or we take them off and don't put them on the bed right away. We want them to first release these frequencies, before we put them on again.
Absolutely. So again, the best, it's important to examine what situation makes you feel unprotected. And in a very simple form, if it's a person, then leave the person. It doesn't have to be, again, negative per se, but sometimes 2 people sit together and they're not really protective of each other. I think and we will talk about this in our podcast that we are planning about relationships.
Most spirits don't like iron. They don't like lead. That automatically protects. But it's not good for everyone.
If in a relationship protection, right? If we talk about, does she love me? Does he love me? Does he want to be with me? Is he good for me? Is this a good relationship? Is it worth going on? All these questions. I usually look into the friendship level, if there's enough friendship bonding. And if it's not, then the one thing that is missing in that relationship is the service of protection. You see, I'm very, very protective of Foster because, some people just don't know when to stop and they think they can go on, which makes me dangerous, I have to say. I'm definitely protective, and I do mean this, if you come unreasonably, and deliberately with some form of nastiness and think, that we are here to deal with it, and it goes against him, don't do that. Don't do that. So protection is the first service when you love somebody. And it is also to defend somebody and to stand by somebody. I don't have to agree with him, and he doesn't have to agree with me. That's not what it is about. But it is I will protect his right to represent his opinion and his truth.
Absolutely.
You know,
And people have crossed that line. You know,
and
they
people
cross
have crossed that
boundary.
line, and
You learn a lesson, but it's quite harsh to go
I make
through.
sure, because you see, as I mentioned earlier, that's the kind of witches I learned from, who say, you know, you not only you punish somebody, you know, to make it dramatic, but you have to teach them a lesson, and the lesson is that somebody will pay for their mistakes. It's just the nature of things. You know, you can't just say, I did something, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. It happened. It has now an effect that will culminate, you know. We see this in the most dramatic forms. So again, I think that when people feel very unprotected, energetically and spiritually, they end up in really weird situations where they're exposed to all sorts of frequencies. And
breaks down your
negativity
immune
is not
system.
the worst you can deal with, trust me.
Because
It's
you
not.
need a spiritual
There-
immunity.
There is definitely also the most negative attack you can go through, which is very difficult to protect yourself from, is manipulation. And I found manipulation, gaslighting, by the way. You see this now in politics. You know, when you look at some statements and you think, am I in the wrong movie? I mean, you know, 5 weeks ago you were against this, now you're against that. I mean, you know, and the other one is you know, there's variations of it, right?
Well, remember that people don't always attack you. They will attack your family.
Right.
They will attack family members. And so when Christos is protecting me, you know, we see a lot of things on television, whatever, which are ridiculous to us, where they say, well, it's not good to have relationships if you're going to be protective. It's hard to have families if you want to be protective. That's absurd, because the family creates a bond of protection.
Absolutely.
A relationship
Absolutely.
creates a stronger protection than when you're alone.
Absolutely.
You know, you put the sticks together and they're stronger
Yeah.
together than a single stick. So because they attack your whole family or the people around you, you will notice it in your periphery when you're attacked. And so the best protection is to be united, actually, is to have a common goal, is to believe in yourselves.
Right.
And to form a protection, a circle of protection around your home together and not just singly, is a very strong warding.
Right.
I believe in warding and protecting yourselves.
No.
And you're going into all sorts of different other kinds of protection as well. But the bottom line is you will feel it, and you have to trust your feelings. You know, when you're being warned about something or this is not a right action for you, you feel it.
Even if you don't see it, follow that feeling. It is there for a reason. And that's how guides communicate. You know, good feeling, bad feeling. It doesn't there doesn't have to be always something dramatic at the end of the day, but pay attention to it.
But I've lost
No.
friends to paranoia, where they're now paranoid of the secret government, or they're paranoid of something, and their phones are tapped, or whatever. They're paranoid of their mother, or they're paranoid of a mother-in-law attacking them. You eventually have to put yourself in check. You have to overcome fear and paranoia when you're doing protection. You have to face your fears in life in order to be protected. It is part of it. And learning about protection is also facing your fears.
Yeah.
So there is a larger manipulation in the world, which we're not going to go into now. But yes, people can be deeply manipulated on many levels by religions, by politics, by all sorts of things, by family members, whatever. Spirituality. So
Teachers, gurus, especially, you know.
there are ways to overcome
Common
it.
sense. Common sense. You have to think it out. That's what Foster said before. You have to really start using your brain. If a religion, a spirituality is asking you to adopt certain rules that demand, you know, we have it. We are the ones. We are the chosen.
The
we are
only
the
ones.
Get out of there. Okay, get out of there. You're being gaslit. You know, we have people who work for us who are born again Christians, which is wonderful. They're lovely people. They like us, you know. But you would be surprised when
They're very open to what we do.
you know, they're
in the
very
end.
open. But also interesting is when they mention certain races, and they say, you know, we don't like these kind of people. Or they're dirty. They're
Terrible.
We're sitting here. We think, I'm sorry that all your prayers to your God didn't make you a better person. You see, but when you expose yourself to judgment and you choose to judge, the last thing you have is protection. So the most important protection is common sense. Think it out. If it doesn't make sense, it's not true. It's very, very simple.
I mean, why would
And-
you have a nice car or something really valuable and then you show it off to other people? If you're going to do that, you're going to need protection because people sees that like a magnet,
Right.
and then they do mug you.
Right.
So you need protections, especially if you're wealthy, especially if you have things. But even when you're poor, everything that you do together as a family unit, once you start to realize what protection really means, how it bonds you together, how you start a pathway in your life that eventually reveals things around you.
Right.
And then eventually, after all those revelations come to light, and they're going to continue all your life, you start to choose a better path for your life, and it starts to raise, in a way, your frequency or what you believe,
Absolutely.
and then you're protected.
Hey, here we go again, you see. So we could go on and off as we love to do sometimes, because there's so much to talk about, you see. But I hope you kind of understand and got a little bit inspired now to understand that whatever you're paying attention to, you're nurturing, you're feeding it.
It amplifies.
It amplifies it. And you cannot remain in a situation for whatever reason, unless you live in a country where you are being forced with a gun against your head to believe something. But if you live in the Western civilization, you're somewhat free. Let's play with this idea. You can choose the quality and the value of how you want to experience your life. Not only to feel protected, but also to feel respected and to feel, you see, that's again from last time. Voss always says, how do you choose to be respected? And I think when we, come to an inner conclusion, I want to be respected in a certain form and being honored and also be proud of what I created in my life and what I have achieved so far without comparing it. I think this creates a level of protection, of natural protection, which is really difficult to break because you're not going to respond to any kind of criticism. And to the younger viewers and the younger listeners among our audience, listen guys, this is maturity speaking. We are definitely in our 50s and 60s, and it is the greatest gift of getting older is you just don't give anymore to what people think at some point. It's so tiring, you have no idea. And coming to a point of feeling really comfortable with yourself because you don't have to justify to somebody else. See?
And remember, a lot of the people you're fighting against have protectors. Meaning, like even Putin pays somebody to protect him, or we know lots of wealthy people who pay people to protect them on other levels.
On that level of wealth and power, they're all somehow connected to spirituality. Don't be fooled.
So, not just for elites to be protected, what about you? Why don't you adopt the same ideas and start to protect yourself? We think it could be quite beneficial.
And especially if you
Knowledge.
feel inspired, absolutely. And to close this podcast, maybe it's a good idea or a good conclusion if I give you this idea that I've been giving to my students in the last couple of months. The best protection is to question what you're paying attention to. In other words, I'm really open to everything, but unless you can prove it and there's evidence, I don't believe it. Therefore, if I don't believe it, what can it provide for me, you see? So protect yourself by being open and interested and receptive, but at the same time also any kind of spiritual value, philosophic value, religious value has to have some benefit on a physical level. You have to see a form of manifestation of it.
If you get obsessed about something, if you're focusing too much on negativity, if you're watching your thoughts and it's too much towards whatever, pornography, or if you're only focused on, drugs or something like that. Of course, drug dealers they have a certain amount of protection because they call people to protect them if you're in a high level thing.
Right.
So again, what you focus on is where you get the results. If you're spending too much of your day worried or just wanting to win the lottery or something, whatever you're obsessed about, some child, whatever, you're going to get more of it. and it keeps replenishing itself. So start focusing on something else. And it's not necessarily protection. It's something positive. It's something quite good for you, or something beneficial, or something that you're grateful for. Whatever it is, gratitude, all these things, thankfulness, whatever, is a wonderful form of protection.
Lastly, my guide is just saying right now, which I think is so hilarious, that the only reason when you don't need protection, where you make protection obsolete, is when you are in a complete agreement with what you do and who you are. When you are on that level, that you are in complete alignment, in complete agreement with what you feel, what you believe,
With a certain pride in
with
it.
a certain pride in it, then you don't need protection. See, so even protection is a technique that guides you eventually to a greater freedom, which is not to need the protection at all, because it's not about I convinced everybody I'm a good person or valuable, but rather that I made sense in who I am and why I am who I am, and the evolution that it inherently contains. And you follow that path, you see, which is the great mystery, isn't it? In that sense, we let you go now,
I used to always say, Christos, the best defense is a great offense, and the best offense is love.
No. So,
But that is, love has always protected me in my life, because I can feel it and I know it. And I know who I am, and I try to choose at every moment, every second, how I want to feel and what I want to focus on.
okay. So with this, listen to the man, he's right. We leave you, and we hope you enjoyed this and it inspired you and motivated you. Yet again, that's always our main goal, why we started all this. And we hope to keep up as regular as possible with the next kind of podcasts. And if you have any questions
Send them to us.
or any kind of ideas what we should talk about or what clarification you need more, we're going to have a Q&A episode in a couple of weeks. And you can send them to our social media, which is on Instagram and Facebook, and you can also write us through the website. And we're going to pick a couple of ideas if we feel that it can benefit a larger audience. It could be interesting for more of you. Of course, we're not going to give readings, because that's not the point of this podcast. It is more to interact and see at some point where you guys are and at what point you are.
And also, if you get jewelry and you buy old jewelry, as a lot of people are buying old things, remember to clean it, because that's the best form of protection. You have no idea who the person was who was wearing that jewelry.
No.
Please cleanse it. Not just your house.
We have to stop, because he's going to go on and on now, because you see there's a million ideas of protection. But I hope you got a little bit of an insight in how important it is, and we made you think. And we hope you have a great day and a great week. And saying thank you for tuning in. Please
See you next time. See you next time.
And I always forget to say this. I have some YouTube friends who always say, you forgot to say like, subscribe, and share. So I'm saying this, please like, subscribe, and share, because that also gives us the feedback that we should continue this at some point.
Yes.
We're not going to do this just if not, if it doesn't reach anybody or not enough people. But that's our goal, of course. But like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. Take good care. Bye.
Bye. Bye.